Welcome, everyone, to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we bring together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators to discuss key insights, strategies, and their experiences that have driven success both for themselves and their customers. I'm your I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and today I'm excited to introduce a special guest, Makoto Kern, who's the founder of Impact, which is a UX strategy and design consultancy that partners with enterprise organizations to simplify complex digital experiences through research-driven design, usability testing, and innovation-led product development. Makoto, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for the introduction, Billy. Sounds like I do a lot. I don't know if I do that much, but
Hey, as long as you
yeah,
do it well, I
appreciate it.
think that's the important part, right?
Definitely.
Excellent. Well, hey, as a reminder to you as well as our audience, we break this up into three sections. First, we want to get to know you and your organization. We also want to get to know your industry as well as your ideal client profile. And then the meat and potatoes, the growth and scale. What are you guys doing to grow? What's worked? I'm interested in what's not worked. I like to learn from other people's mistakes because I make plenty of my own. So if I can minimize that, that's great. But it's going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it. You ready to get going?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Hey, let's start with your business and kind of in that elevator pitch, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Give us a little bit of overview. What do you guys do?
Definitely. So, for the past like 20 plus years, we've launched hundreds of digital products across every industry vertical for oil and gas, healthcare, cybersecurity. We pretty much seen the same three critical problems that organizations do when they're trying to build successful software. Basically, we see teams jump straight into wireframes and development without any kind of proper strategic alignment. And that leads to like scope creep and budget overruns. Second, we generally see like business leaders, they're not aligned on what their users actually want and their priorities. And this usually causes endless feature debates within their organization. And then third, we're generally seeing companies, they lack any kind of process, like proven process to de-risk their complex software investments. It takes a lot of money. They just jump straight into it. And, it's like building a house. If you're going to build a house and you don't ask the people who are actually moving into it, and when they actually move into it and it's not what they want, it's really expensive to change it then. And so, we've seen Fortune 500 companies waste months and months of development time building features that users never adopt. They just get to it and they're like, oh, we don't like this. Or we've seen, other robotics companies that they'll hire an agency. They'll just, hey, let's just start designing. This is what we think we want, and they just churn, and they don't get the results what they really need. So what we are, I think, I always say we're like the cheat code to successful software development. We start off with a really strategic immersion workshop where we understand what the stakeholders and what leadership wants before any kind of design begins. You really want to have that alignment and that focus. Then we try to understand the user's personas and their workflows before any kind of feature decision comes into place, but we align that with what the business really wants. And then at the end, we deliver this kind of proven de-risk roadmap where it prevents costly mistakes that we see everywhere else. So, basically we get in there, we would never recommend a project. If we were them, we wouldn't do it. And so our goal is to really handle that complex strategic part of the design work because businesses they have to keep the lights on, they have to keep running. So we work collaboratively with them while we deliver, the best possible user experience that actually helps with speed and direction so they can go to market faster, especially nowadays with AI being so, the barrier to entry is lower. So you're going to have your competitors nipping at your heels so fast and building things and copying you. So not only do you have to launch fast, you have to launch fast in the right direction, and you have to constantly improve as well. So this is what our company handles and really helps companies out by doing that.
That's very cool. I'm
Yeah,
excited to actually kind of dive into some AI with you.
definitely.
It seems as though, as you would expect, a lot of my conversations with my guests tend to get into the AI, and I feel like
Yeah.
in your space, AI is really taking a big chunk, and I'm curious how you're adopting to it and taking it into consideration. But first, before we jump into that, I want to get to know you a little bit more. So,
hmm
Makoto, how did you get to where you're at? Walk us through kind of the progression of your development personally. I was looking at your LinkedIn. Your resume is
Yep.
quite impressive. So I'm excited to learn a little bit about you.
Definitely. So, yeah, I grew up in Chicago, south suburbs of Chicago. Yeah, I was a middle class family, nothing too crazy, but I went into my dad was he was a high school teacher, so I always loved reading like the books in high school, especially around space. I wanted to be an astronaut, all that good stuff. But I love to take apart and tinker, so I basically went to electrical engineering at Northern Illinois University, and from there I studied and got my bachelor's, and then I got into my master's. I did actually robotics for my master's, which is really cool. Built this little six-legged walking robot for my master's thesis, and did it on like neural network and fuzzy algorithms. So it was really cool, really nerdy. Um, but for the next 10 years after that, I basically was in the manufacturing and automation space for 10 years, working around Chicago. And at the same time, I always loved reading books and stories about entrepreneurs, how they got there. It didn't matter if they were a chef, if they were whatever. Just always loved hearing those kind of stories. And man, I tried everything to say, you know what, I love engineering, but I want to deal more with people. I want to grow my own thing. And so I tried many different things, but what naturally kind of led me into starting my company was that I was, I was building or I was basically modifying software that was built by engineers for people that works on the manufacturing floor. And those people aren't generally engineers. They're just everyday people. And so if they're shipping a widget and they see a software that says, hey, this is wrong or this is right, they can ship a thousand widgets incorrectly because they didn't notice something on the interface. So my job was to really automate those things, make it super easy to use with the person that's interacting with it. So I was just naturally kind of gearing towards UX design. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I need to start to do something. So I started building websites on the side. I think a lot of people probably do that or have done that. But I really started to understand from everything from the SEO to just the design. And I got to a point where I was on Craigslist. I was actually trying to find work through Craigslist. It was interesting too because I found one of my first biggest clients on Craigslist, well-known brand. They were just kind of like being kind of secretive about advertising on there. And we ended up actually building something for Turtle Wax, which is pretty interesting. Yeah,
Oh,
it was one of their sister companies, this interactive garage where you can kind of go in and you can see like cars coming in and out, and you could pick. It's called Marvel Mystery Oil, and it was pretty cool. We built this interactive garage. I think they had it up for like 8 years because we did an awesome job at it, and so yeah, I just got to a point where it's just more and more business was coming my way, consulting opportunities, and so I'm like, okay, I'm quitting my job as an engineer, and yeah, I just started doing that and went in it full time. And at that point, it was, I loved the fact that it was something that I had to learn. There wasn't a slew of classes. You could go to university, you could find some classes on like human computer interaction, cognitive psychology, things like that, but really not a lot. YouTube wasn't even really a thing just yet. And so I was just reading and absorbing and just doing everything I can, and just figuring out like how do I grow myself as a person and the skill set, and how do I grow my business at the same time. And so I had friends that were also entrepreneurs, so just watching them and how they grew their business and just learning from them was also very helpful. But I mean, it was during the dot-com boom and bust, and so we'll get into how I feel like there's some kind of similarity there with the AI. But for right now, it's such a big boom. It's like, hey, build me a eBay, Craigslist, MySpace clone that can do X, Y, and Z. And so I was just, you're just getting all these crazy asks. And so it just got to a point, where, I just kept on growing, and I actually ended up moving to Austin. And it was interesting too, because before I moved to Austin, kind of knew I was going to move to Austin. I started optimizing my website for the Austin and Texas market, and that actually paid off pretty well. I did it like a year before, really started to do, create articles and things like that, and really try to get my website up there. And I started meeting more people, networking, and I just got to a point where like I was starting to get a lot of clients out of Houston and Dallas, and grew my team to up to 50 people. And just it was amazing. Where my very first big client in Houston, I was competing against a well-known UX agency that I was following. They were like, I was like, wow, this is amazing. When he said, hey, we've got two people, we are competing against one other agency for this big project. You're going to redesign all of our apps for 30 different apps that you're redesigning. It was a massive thing. And I said, he told me the competitor, and I was like, oh my God, it's called Adaptive Path. Like awesome guys, but they ended up getting acquired by Capital One. And I basically told them like, look, these kind of consultants, they'll come in, they'll give you an advice or give you some kind of blue sky idea. But I said, I'm going to stick here and help you execute on it. If things work or things don't work, I'm going to stick by and take ownership of what I recommend. So I'm not going to price myself at a super expensive, like a McKinsey or Accenture, but I'm going to show my value by sticking around and helping you guys throughout the entire process, because this to redesign 30 apps is going to take a while. And so they're still our client after 10 years. And we're actually integrating AI with them and everything. So it's been an awesome run. Yeah, for the last 10 years, we've hit almost every industry, really focused in on like enterprise software. I love doing the complex things. I think it goes back to my engineering side of things. The creative pieces are great, and it's always sexy as a designer to do, pretty looking websites or apps, but I really like solving the complex problems. And so that's what I pretty much do with our team and everybody that we get into, is that the same focus is like, hey, we're in here for the long term. We want to take ownership. The more we know about your business, the better and more valuable we become. So that's kind of how I grew Impact.
That's incredible.
Uh,
How long have you been in Austin?
I was in Austin for about 5.5, 6 years,
Okay.
and yeah, I'm actually in Vegas right now. Our headquarters is still in Austin, but Vegas is a good place for a lot of conferences, and so good place to meet up with different clients, and take them out for a little night out of town once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's funny
But
that you'd say that, even because I moved to Austin about 5 years ago, and
okay.
tomorrow I'm flying to Vegas for a couple days, so
Oh
we might
wow.
need to get together.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
yeah. All right. So I want to. You started going there towards the end.
Hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about your ideal client profile. So
Yep.
this enterprise brand obviously is large, complex, difficult problem, or challenging, challenging work that you're
Yeah.
achieving with them. But let's, day to day. If I were to bring you a customer right now, who are they? What are they looking like?
So the ideal customer for us is not really, it doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter the industry. It's really the maturity level of your organization and the leadership and their egos. Because it's funny, when you see corporate, there are a lot of egos involved. And when you get into a situation where it's probably not best for you to spend the money or the time to figure things out, because that's expensive. And sometimes leadership is thinking that, hey, I need to be the one that has to bring in the strategy. I should be the one that does this. But I think it was something that even Mr. Beast said to his team. Somebody found some notes or something. I saw somebody reading it online, but it says, Mr. Beast says, hire consultants. They will already spent the money, the time, and the energy to go through the problems. Don't you spend my money to figure this out. Use that money that we have to understand and learn, and then figure it. Then you can grow after that. But same thing here. It's the clients that we talk to. I mean, startups. They tend to have smaller budgets. They tend to be very lean, and so they try to work in that space. But that's why startups have a high rate of failure. And so it's like when you're starting off, you have to be very intentful of what you're doing, and you're really testing out things, so you can't be afraid to fail. But there's a certain aspect where they just got to get to a point of an idea of MVP. So not necessarily startups, but then also Fortune like 10 companies we've helped. But then you have to look at it as they're almost like startups within these companies. And so if they're looking to redesign a new product, but they have a legacy product they've been supporting for the last 10 years. They don't know the new tech stacks. The processes that they have are probably bandaged together. They're probably dysfunctional. And the fact that everybody's been there probably for a long time, they're not having good collaborative communication things because, again, they've have a legacy software that's been sitting there for a long time. So they're not continuously iterating or improving. Otherwise, they would have been doing that for over the last 10 years. So it's really just, again, it's the timing of the people that we have to get in there and talk with where they understand, hey, look, these people have experience of launching many, many products. They know that there are certain things that you can't just rush into. You can't just give me pretty UX wireframes and say, okay, that's our product. Or you can't just give me some code and launch it. You have to have alignment across, all your leadership fronts, from the business side all the way down to design, product marketing, sales, customer service. They all have to be aligned, and they usually never are. So that's kind of where if we could get in there and we could understand that maturity level, then we know how much of an effect we have on companies.
Yeah, you were starting to go there a little bit, but we've worked with some of those larger enterprise brands. One project we're working on is one of the larger telecommunications companies, and it's a newer brand inside of it. So it is like a startup, which has its own unique set of challenges, but it's pretty amazing once you start to peel the onion back at large enterprise brands. Sometimes they're more disorganized than your smaller ones, and a little bit harder to kind of steer that ship, right? And there's a lot of red tape that they have to go through. So it can present its own set of challenges
For sure.
that you need to manage.
Yeah, I think communication is usually the biggest problem with them. It's, whether it's just poor processes in communicating, people don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be innovative and to do things that seem risky. Nobody wants to do that in corporate. If you're a very risky person, you're probably going to start your own company. But
Yeah,
if you're risk adverse, especially middle management and below, they don't want to say things that may get them into trouble. Usually, maybe the younger demographics, they may say, "Hey, you know what? This is not working. This is how we do it." But this is kind of where us as consultants, and I tell my team, I said, "Hey, look, we're not here to sugarcoat anything. We're here to actually tell you what's wrong, and you do with it with what you will. But we will recommend the best approach of what we think works. And if it hurts you to call your baby ugly, that's what we're going to do." So I think, I've been in so many of these conversations, and I think at the C-suite level, they do definitely appreciate that when you're saying those things and being transparent. And there's a delivery, of course, that takes finesse, but
yeah,
yeah, it's always an interesting it's harder to deal with the people than it is to actually build the product in a
yep,
lot of cases.
yep. I can see and understand that. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and start talking about the industry a little bit, and
Yeah.
how competitive is your industry, and then in addition to that, I suppose, or a piggyback on that, what are you guys doing that stands out to differentiate yourself? And then final, kind of a loaded question here. Let's start migrating into that AI conversation. I'm really curious to see what your guys' take is on it.
Definitely. So, with the first part of your question, can you repeat that?
Yeah, the industry, your guys' advantage, is it competitive? Yeah, how are you guys standing out?
Yeah. So, it's definitely gotten, we've got globalization. There's worldwide is my competition, and there's a commoditization that is happening, and it's funny. It's like this kind of roller coaster or wave where it's just ebb and flow of the same problems. It doesn't matter from 20 years ago till now. I'm still seeing the same approaches where people are feature centric versus user centric. AI is feature. I don't care what you say. AI is a feature. And if you just focus on building a feature and you think if I build it, they'll come, that's not the case. You got to be user centric. But features seem to be like, hey, we know what we know. Let's just build it. Let's do it because this is what people want. But they don't do any user research. They don't talk to their customers. And that's a common thing that we see constantly. And, when you're commoditization of design, development, yeah, you can hire that person at $5 an hour out of India, but you're going to run not into the same issues as you usually do. Is you get what you pay for. Those people can work anywhere in the world as well, so that people know their value. If they know they're good at something, they're not going to be charging a very low amount. But the problem is when you talk to some corporations or a lot of corporations, their financial side of things is separate from the rest of them. So they say, okay, well, this person's $5 an hour. This person's $100 an hour. Why don't we just hire the $5 an hour person? Because that's accounting talking to you. But
Yep.
they're like, well, because if this person who's at $5 an hour is doing it, we don't know. The outcomes are horrible. It takes longer. We don't know if they're right. Such and such, two different, the product teams, the other teams, they have to step up because they're not catching the codes or the bugs. There's performance issues. There's all these things that compound with that, but nobody tracks that down the line. They just see the upfront cost and they're like, oh, well, that's cheaper, so let's go with that. That's one issue. Another issue is that, or another thing that we're seeing is private equity. Private equity is the bane of a lot of consultants in certain senses, and other senses it's great. The private equity has two approaches. They can go in and organically try to grow that business, or they can go in and siphon all the profits because they're the first ones to steal that profits, and they'll cheapen out everything. And so you're kind of seeing the kind of divergence of that. You got private equity people that come in and actually do a great job of building that company, but that's hard. It's hard work. It's easier to siphon off the profits and then take away and just offshore everything. And so, that in itself is going to be a problem because what you're going to happen is you're going to have software that's going to be very hackable because it's coded poorly. You got performance, slowdown, quality. Everything starts to go down from the code, design, customer service, everything, because it's cheaper. So I think there's a pendulum that's going to be swinging amongst that. And even though execs would love to say, "Oh, let's just hire one person and then AI will do the rest," we could get into that, and there's conversations about that. But I feel like that's not going to be so easy. There's never a shortcut to good design. So what we're doing is, it's that strategy piece. That strategy piece is very hard to do because you have to deal with people and you have to know how to deal with people right. And you have to have a holistic view. Having that holistic view of doing anything is very difficult. I mean, that's what the C-suite is for. But even then they still silo out the C-suite to be just good at one thing. And if they don't communicate, they're not good at connecting the dots. And so we're trying to solve that problem whenever we go in to say, hey, there's a much better, faster, and ultimately it's going to be cheaper for you to do it right than to do it wrong. So that's kind of some of the ways in which we're trying to compete, but it's the kind of thing where I use this as an analogy is if you have kids, it's cold outside. You tell them, hey, wear a jacket. It's freezing outside. And they don't want to wear a jacket. And you're like, well, you're going to get sick. No, I'll be fine. And they'll go outside. They don't wear a jacket. And it's the same thing here. If they don't know what good design is or what a good result is, and they've been kind of, they've done the same dysfunctional things, you can tell them till the cows come home that you've launched hundreds of products, but they've launched one 10 years ago, and they'll still think they know better how to get there faster. So I just say, you know what, I'm going to bring this jacket, and I'm going to come with you along the journey, and then I'll give you that jacket a little bit later when you realize, shit, I'm cold.
Man, I have so many thoughts running through of my boys telling me that they're okay, and I'm just like, all right, man. At some point you're going to realize that I've lived this life a little longer, and
Yep.
you can listen to me. But I like your idea of bringing the jacket along with you. And yeah, I mean, I can imagine in your seat, the last thing you want to do is build a product or a tool that is just sits on the shelf, right? First of
Yep.
all, that's a waste of money. Second of all,
No.
there's an element where you look bad because you built this tool that doesn't get utilized, even though, it's like you told them to bring the jacket, if you will. So, um, yeah, that consultative aspect, partnering with it, with the team, with the people, is critical. And uh, I'm thinking about our customers as well. At the end of the day, it's the people that you're dealing with that you have to manage the most. It's almost like the advertising for us. The advertising is almost the easy part. It's the
Yeah.
people that are the difficult part. As much as we love them and, everything else, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with points of view, you're dealing with, oh man, we used to work more with colleges and universities, and they're so stuck in their ways that they don't want to try new things because for them, status quo is success. If they want to risk and try something new and it doesn't work, that's not going to look good for them, right?
Yeah.
So it's difficult working with people.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, as soon as we come in, we can see who's defensive, who's not, who's open for it, and I mean, I've been in that situation before where when I was working way back in the day at a corporation, and yeah, they bring in consultants, you immediately mentally you get defensive, but then I'm like, man, these people know what if they're consultants, we paid them a lot of money. Let me absorb as much as I can because this is going to make me better. And yeah, they may not recommend all the right things, but there's some learnings there. So if you keep that open mind, it just values you more and makes you look good because they're not there to replace you or fire you or lay you off. They're trying to accelerate the growth and the revenue and everything else that secures your job. So you should want to have like good outcomes from consultants that come in. So
Yep.
that's why I always try to tell everybody that we interface with. I could, you could just tell them the meetings when they just give you attitude and you're like, hey, I'm not going to steal your job, but you probably want to listen to us first before you start to get super defensive. So it's kind
Exactly.
of funny.
Well, that's good. Well, let's dive into the last section here and talk about growth and scale. So, how long, not how long, I'm sorry. What are some of the growth tactics you're doing today? How are you getting new customers? What's worked and what's not working?
So I think with like every agency, referrals are like the biggest thing. And so it has been for us as well. For the last 10 years, it's literally been all referrals. So it's a testament to what we do. But when you have recessionary times, that's where it becomes problematic. And we're in the macro environments right now. It's unstable, and people don't know, are we heading to a recession? We're hearing layoffs, all that stuff. So referrals tend to dry up a little bit faster. So that's the kind of thing where, for me, SEO is kind of dead. It's zero clicks with AI. So nobody's going down the page. Maybe if you can try to optimize for AI, but again, it becomes zero clicks again. So how do you market yourself? And that's you have to lean on social media. You still have to network. It comes down to the fundamentals, and that's what I'm doing. I've been actively doing. We have our own podcast that we have, and we want people to know what we've done. I mean, I've always been the kind of person. I'm old enough to where I'm like, I just want to do the work. I don't care about talking about it. I don't want to show off. I feel like I'm bragging, but I actually just want to do the work. That's all I care about. But you can't do that anymore. You have to talk about what you've done. You got to talk about
Yeah.
the wins because then nobody will hear you. And so, from, I hate using LinkedIn, but I know LinkedIn, everybody's on it. And, with cold outreach, warm outreach, whatever tactics we're trying, I'm just trying to network and meet people and not try to do it in such a salesy way that you see a lot of the cold outreach, and just open up your LinkedIn email box and you'll see all the all the bad ways on what to do, and you probably only look at about 0.1% of that. So
Yeah.
I think it's really trying to understand what is the signal versus noise way approach to getting to people, and I think authenticity is a big thing, and doing podcasts like this where people can hopefully hear what you say and see the passion in what you do, I think is going to be a key part of that. And there's strategies to automate and create funnels and things like that, but it all ties in, I think, still to the content you create and how you approach the communication to people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And you're right how referrals ebb and flow within
Hmm.
the, the overall, as you said, the macro economy. Um, when you are talking about referrals in general, how much of your referral business comes from past customers, and then how much comes from like referral partners, other agencies, organizations that you work with that maybe you guys share similar customers with?
Um, Most of it comes from past clients or
Yeah.
current clients. So yeah, I don't really the agency part I've not really interfaced too much with because usually we're the product and design agency that's in there. We don't really partner with anybody else. If it is, it's somewhat competing. And development agencies, I think they again, I hate to rag on it, but the offshore development agencies that we see, because we do development as well, but we touch mostly on the front end side and some back end, but we really try to set up best DevOps processes. So right away we go in there, we say, okay, what does the handoff from design to dev look like? Oh, what's the dev team doing? Oh, why is the development look so much different than the design? Why is everything working worse or slower or whatever? And so we get into these things and we start to see lots of problems, and generally those dev teams have a UX designer or whatever, and they're horrible. And so it's usually it tends not to come from them because I feel like most of them see us as competitors, and the fact that you know I think we know what we're doing is also somewhat it's scary for them. So I think if they feel like they're going to give us any more business, we're going to take it away from them. So it's really from past clients is where we see most of our referrals come from.
Very cool. Well, this has been good. I appreciate it, and we're
Yeah,
kind of running up to some time. So I want to jump into the final section, which is a lightning round. It's a couple
yeah.
questions, real simple, real easy. So I'll get us going if you're ready for it.
Let's do it.
Awesome. First one, coffee or tea?
I do both.
All
I
right,
drink tea
nice.
and then I drink the coffee.
All right, that's awesome. I am shamefully addicted to caffeine, and I have
All
way
right.
too much. But all right, what's one tool or system you rely on to keep your business running smoothly?
Uh, Running smoothly. I think my invoicing system.
That's
I gotta
good.
collect that money.
Yeah, you got to get paid. That's right. That
Yep.
that keeps everything else moving. All right, favorite book, podcast, or resource that's influenced you the most?
Influenced me the most. Oh my goodness. Um, God, you stumped me on that one. I mean, I'm an avid book listener, like audio book listener.
Yeah.
And when I was starting to run my business, I was listening to about 50 to 75 audiobooks a year, just driving through Chicago traffic. And so Think and Grow Rich, I think, was one of the biggest ones.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Napoleon Hill is great. And
Yep.
you're actually the second person this week, I think, to bring that book and him
Oh,
up. So that's
interesting.
good.
Hmm.
All right, one bucket list item you've already checked off.
Uh, Hit 1 million in revenue.
Nice. Very good. What's one
Yeah.
goal you're still working towards?
Uh, I think I'm always working towards spending more time with my family and making more time. So however I can do that would be best.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah.
All right. And then what's one of the biggest challenges you faced in your career, and how did it shape you and how you approach business?
When it was a .com boom and bust, I grew my team super fast. I was and I there was no quality control with the people who I hired. So projects and all that started to churn. It did not come out well. So when that bust happened, I knew that the next phase of that, which was over the past like 15 years, I was going to grow my team with intent and make sure every person that I bring on, those people are very important to the success of your company, especially a service-based industry. You have to have a strong team. If you don't, and you don't empower them, you might as well you might as well forget it, because that's everything. So I think that's what I learned the most.
That's a very important lesson and harkens back to people first, right? Our team first.
Yep.
So I love it. All right. And finally, Makoto, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's one of the best ways they can get in touch?
Definitely. You can visit our website, IIIMPACT.io. We also have a podcast called Make an Impact Podcast. Doing pretty well. We talk about AI, UX, product strategy, tell war stories, things like that. So check that out when you get a chance. And yeah, check out the social media. You should be able to find us pretty easily.
I love it. Well, again, I appreciate your time, Makoto. For everybody else, this is a wrap for this episode of Scaling Smart. I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of Scaling Smart, where we have conversations with real people who have real stories, who have learned how to scale smart.